Good evening. Welcome to I think it's day 10. I think I'm on day 10 of my YouTube. I'm doing an evening YouTube. I didn't really feel it this morning. I wasn't really up for doing one, so I'm doing it this evening because I've made a vow to myself to do these YouTubes, to go into my resistance, to not miss a day. And I have to be honest, the last few days it has been a bit of a struggle. It's been that kind of like I'm starting to do it and gaining momentum, and it's like, no, stop. You're not going to do it. You can't do it. You're no good. All of those little gremlins and all those little voices have started coming in. So, but I've been to Pilates. I'm feeling much better. So I thought I can come on now and do my YouTube. Now, you might hear some bangs. If you hear some bangs going off, it's fireworks. Obviously, it's the 5th of November and it's Guy Fawkes, obviously here in the UK. I don't know if it's around the rest of the world. And I live very close to an area where they've got a big firework display. So, and I can hear it. And sometimes when I'm actually just laid in my bed or I stand on my balcony, I can see them all as well. So, which is quite nice. But so if the bangs go off, that's what it is. Okay, please don't worry. It's not anything else. That's what it is. And I wanted to really talk to you this evening about, I think about healing trauma and why we need to heal trauma. I've reposted one of my videos. I did a series a couple of years ago. I did a series of videos on TikTok about the reasons why we need to heal trauma because I was doing, obviously, healing my trauma. And I came across lots of reasons as to why, because trauma affects a lot of things in our lives. And trauma is sewn into the fabric of society. And many people are walking around without even realizing that they're traumatized. And some of their behaviors and their patterns could be because of trauma. And so, but there's lots of people who aren't traumatized either. And I think we have to be really careful as well, because I know that trauma has become a bit of a buzzword. And for people like me who have really suffered with trauma and the consequences of it and have healed it, it can be a little bit off-putting when it's used so flippantly in many, many things, because trauma can be quite serious and it can do quite a lot of harm to your mind, body, and your soul. And I know it made me very, very poorly. And I ended up not well from it with like chronic fatigue and chronic pain and nervous system dysregulation. And over the years, as I've worked through all of this, I've come to really understand why it is that we need to heal our trauma. For one, it's like we can pass it on now. They are recognizing that it's intergenerational, and that you can pass your trauma on down through your genes, through your DNA. And I don't know a huge amount about that, but I've watched some workshops on it, and yeah, I can see how it can be passed on down through. There's also, if you criticize your children or you harm your children, they don't actually stop loving you. They stop loving themselves and they stop caring about themselves. I know now when I look back on my years, I certainly didn't love or like myself very much at all because of the trauma, because of how I was treated in my external world, and because of the things that have happened to me. So trauma creates a lot of stress. It creates a lot of nervous system dysregulation. It can cause a lot of dis-ease in your body, heart attacks, strokes. There's all sorts of things that can happen. And for me, healing trauma I think is a fundamental part of our humanity and who we are, being human. Healing trauma is because trauma is sewn into the fabric of society. Every human being is susceptible to trauma. We're all susceptible to it, or something traumatic happening to us. So would it not make sense that because it's something that happens, that we also have that capacity to heal? So if you think about when you break an arm, or you cut your hand, or you do something, you put a plaster on the arm and you hold it still and your body heals. It knows how to heal that bone as long as it's kept still. But if you're kind of like running around and going on monkey bars and things, it's not going to really heal very well, is it? You have a cut on your hand, and what you do is you put a plaster on it or you get it stitched, and that heals. That will eventually heal, and maybe you might be left with a scar, or maybe that scar will fade. But what trauma does is trauma doesn't just heal by holding still. Trauma doesn't just heal by putting plaster over it. Plasters are the alcohol, the drugs, the relationships that we go into to cover up all of this pain and all this sorrow and all this emotional stuff that we've got trapped in our bodies. But what we're doing constantly is we're picking at that wound. We're picking at that trauma wound, and we're digging at it every time that we avoid it, or every time we push it away, or every time we pretend it didn't matter what happened to us. Trauma is a big deal. And I personally feel that not enough is done to support people who have had trauma. When I was sick and I did everything privately. I took everything out of the hands of the doctors and the psychiatrists and the GPs. And when I discovered that I was suffering with the consequences of trauma and I looked at trauma therapies, that is when I started to heal, when I started to see it in that context. And then when I even started to then look at it as it was a mind body thing that was going on, the healing accelerated even more. Now, we owe it to ourselves, not just to ourselves, because we are beautiful human beings that deserve a really beautiful life, but we owe it to the world to heal. We can't get away from the fact that there is trauma everywhere. Bombs being dropped, car crashes, accidents, beatings, shootings, whatever there is so many things that cause trauma that people are actually witness to. Fights. Oh, the fireworks are going off now. Fights, violence, assaults, sexual abuse, rapes, attacks. There's so many things that happen that in life that cause trauma. And yet trauma is not seen as this thing that really needs to have a lot of healing done. I see I see some amazing people around that talk about healing trauma. The Peter Levines, the Bessel van der Kolk, you've got Irene Lyon, you've got Roland Bow, you've got this, I think it's the Centre for Healing in Australia. I think that's where they are. I'm not sure if it's the right place, but there's also Alex Howard. There's so many people who are very focused on healing trauma. But somebody who is an influencer or somebody who's a celebrity will have more followers on social media than they do. When trauma is this huge thing that's affecting so many areas in our world and in our life, but it doesn't get priority. It doesn't get priority also in the NHS, right? So for me, it doesn't get priority. It's not treated. Trauma needs to be treated not with CBT. Trauma needs to be treated in a very, very different way to the way that it is treated. And it has to be a bottom-up process, and it has to be a gentle process. It has to be, for me, EMDR was a lifesaver. And I firmly believe that EMDR should be available to every single person who has trauma. Every single person. I think that every single person should be able to access EMDR therapy or some kind of trauma therapy. But for me, EMDR therapy was the one. But I've paid for mine. I've paid for everything privately because I couldn't access what I needed through any kind of healthcare system or the NHS. So I had to do it privately. And all I can do is share with you what I've done and how I've healed and what I've done to heal, and hope that it lands with some of you. And that maybe when you might wake up one morning and go, okay, yes, I want to heal. I want to do this. I want to take that journey. I want to take that plunge. And if you do want to heal, subscribe to some of my videos, watch some of my stuff, go on my Facebook page, go on my Instagram. I give lots of things there. I'm a coach. I'm a somatic practitioner and a coach, and I'm incredibly trauma informed, as you might have been able to notice. But it's not, and I've done my own journey. I have walked that walk and I can talk that talk. And I know how hard it is. Oh my God, I know how hard it is to do the journey. And I know how draining it is. And I know how impossible it feels, but it's actually possible. Healing your trauma is possible. It really is. But we need more resources to be able to heal that trauma, and we need more access to it. We need more, maybe I'll get a petition going, who knows, on something to get more trauma informed therapies, on the NHS, because that's what, the government needs to step up, because we've got a lot of traumatized people. COVID really traumatized a lot of people and made it really difficult for, people. It's, there's a lot of trauma flying around. So we need to heal. We really need to heal our trauma. And I hope that if you're watching this, that maybe you might consider, if you've got trauma in your background, that you might need to heal it too. And when you heal, I promise you, your life does get better. It doesn't feel like it at the time. It feels like you could be drowning in stuff, but eventually things do start to change. You start to get these like lovely moments of peace and presence and solitude and joy, and you start to like yourself a bit more, and you start to love yourself a bit more, and you start to really care about yourself. So I really hope that maybe, this video might land with a few of you. And anyway, I'm going to go because I'm going to climb into my bed and I'm going to watch the rest of the fireworks. So you have a beautiful evening, whatever it is that you're doing, and take good care. And I will see you on my next day, which I think is day 11.